Somewhere over the South China Sea, a drone is watching. It has been watching for hours. No pilot, no cockpit, no risk to a single Chinese soldier. The country operating it built their first military drone from the wreckage of an American spy plane shot down over Vietnam. That was 1966. They had no blueprints. They had no license. They had pieces of someone else's machine, a handful of engineers, and a directive from the top: figure it out. What followed over the next 6 decades was one of the most dramatic industrial transformations in aviation history. A military drone program built from scraps became the largest exporter of armed unmanned aircraft on the planet. This is every military drone China ever built. 20 platforms, 7 decades, and a combat record that most of the world has never read about but increasingly has to live with. Chapter 1. Stolen Blueprints. China's drone program is born from wreckage. The story starts not in China, but in a paddy field somewhere in Southeast Asia. The year is 1964. The United States Air Force is running secret reconnaissance missions over China and North Vietnam using a drone called the Ryan Firebee, military designation AQM-34. Small, jet-powered, designed to photograph what manned aircraft could not reach safely, the Firebee was fast, disposable, and supposedly unrecoverable. The Chinese shot several of them down, and at least one landed largely intact. Before there was anything else, there was the Soviet connection. In the late 1950s, the USSR supplied China with a target drone called the Lavochkin La-17. It was a jet-powered aerial target used to train surface-to-air missile crews. Basic, slow, designed to be destroyed. But when Soviet technical aid was abruptly withdrawn in the early 1960s, following the Sino-Soviet split, China was left holding a handful of La-17 airframes and no one to explain how to build more. So they reverse-engineered it. Chinese engineers at the Nanjing Institute of Aeronautics stripped the La-17 down to its last bolt. The result was the Changkong-1, known as the CK-1. It first flew on the 6th of December, 1966. It was powered by a WP-6 turbojet, which was, itself, a Chinese copy of a Soviet engine. A copy of a copy. Unglamorous, derivative, and exactly what China needed. The CK-1 entered service in the 1970s and spent the next decade simulating enemy aircraft for missile testing and pilot training. Nobody outside China wrote articles about it. Nobody outside China needed to. But back to that Firebee wreckage. Engineers at the Beijing Institute of Aeronautics, now Beihang University, were tasked with building China's first strategic reconnaissance drone from the recovered American hardware. They had no original schematics. They worked from physical measurement, material analysis, and inference. What they built was the Wuzhen 5, the WZ-5, also known internationally as the Chonghong 1. The WZ-5 made its first flight in 1972. It was officially inducted into the People's Liberation Army Air Force in 1980, 8 years from first flight to service, which tells you something about how hard it was to get right. The aircraft was air-launched from a modified H-6 bomber, fired up its jet engine at altitude, flew its reconnaissance route at high speed, then parachuted back to Earth when the engine was cut via remote control. It carried 5 positions for optical cameras, electro-optical and infrared, with photographs stored on film inside the fuselage. For 2 full decades, the WZ-5 was the only operational strategic reconnaissance drone in the Chinese Air Force. It was not elegant. It was not sophisticated by contemporary American or Soviet standards. But it worked, and it was entirely theirs. The CK-1 and the WZ-5 built 2 things China needed desperately: a generation of drone engineers, and the institutional belief that they could build what they needed themselves, even if it started with someone else's crashed hardware. That belief would define every platform that came after. Chapter 2. Patient capital, the universities, the factories, and the long buildup. Through the 1980s and into the 1990s, China's drone program looked, from the outside, like it had stalled. The WZ-5 soldiered on as the primary PLAAF reconnaissance UAV. Nothing dramatic appeared at air shows. No new armed platforms were announced. What was actually happening was invisible. China was building the infrastructure. Beihang University, which had reverse-engineered the WZ-5 from Firebee wreckage, established its pilotless aircraft section in 1963. By the 1990s, it was running a systematic research and development pipeline in conjunction with China's major state defense firms. The university's link to the industry was not informal. It was contractual, funded, and deliberate. The institution that would eventually dominate China's armed drone exports, the China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation, known as CASC, had already begun developing what would become its most important product line, the CH-series. The word means rainbow. The early models were quiet. The CH-1 and CH-2 were unarmed reconnaissance platforms, simple in design and modest in capability. But they established something critical. In 2003, CASC signed its first contract to export CH-series drones. The delivery was completed in 2004. That single transaction, largely unnoticed at the time, was the opening move in China's global armed drone strategy. Meanwhile, the Beihang-linked team had been working since 2005 on a more capable reconnaissance platform in partnership with the Hongdu Aviation Industry Group. By late 2009, internet photos showed a twin-boom, medium-altitude drone sitting on a Chinese tarmac. It was the BZK-005, known locally as the Changying, meaning Long Eagle. The BZK-005 was a serious machine. It could reach an altitude of 8,000 meters. It could stay airborne for 40 hours. It had a maximum takeoff weight of 1,250 kilograms and a payload capacity of 150 kilograms. Those numbers put it in the same class as the American MQ-1 Predator in terms of altitude and endurance. It was equipped with electro-optical cameras, infrared sensors, synthetic aperture radar, and satellite communications for real-time data transmission. And it was adopted simultaneously by the PLAAF, the PLA Ground Forces, and the PLA Navy, the same basic airframe watching borders, coastlines, and deep ocean approaches all at once. The BZK-005 is not famous. It does not appear in Western news coverage, but as of 2023, it has been exported to Mauritania, and variants are still being actively developed. The BZK-005D, spotted by Japanese Air Defense Forces in August 2024, carries electronic intelligence pods under the wings and multiple blade antennas under the nose. This aircraft that began life in 2005 is still evolving 20 years later. That is what patient capital in a state-directed aerospace program looks like. Chapter 3. The export weapon rainbow goes to war abroad. In 2008, CASC walked into the Zhuhai Air Show with a drone that nobody had seen coming. The CH-3 was the armed version of the earlier CH-1 and CH-2 reconnaissance platforms. It had swept-back wings, forward canards for stability, a pusher propeller at the rear, and two underwing hardpoints for guided missiles. Its operational range was 2,400 kilometers. It was a medium-altitude, long-endurance armed drone explicitly designed to kill things, and CASC was openly marketing it to foreign militaries within a year of its debut. By 2009 and 2010, the CH-3 was being shown at defense exhibitions in Brunei and Malaysia to prospective buyers across Southeast Asia. Within a few years, it had found customers in Algeria, Iraq, Nigeria, and Pakistan. Total production is reported at around 500 units. For a first armed drone, those are not trivial numbers. But the CH-3 was a proof of concept. The platform that built China's export empire came next. 4 years into service, the CH-4 entered service in 2014. If you saw a photograph of it without labels, you might mistake it for an American MQ-9 Reaper. The visual resemblance is striking and entirely intentional, because the CH-4 was designed to occupy exactly the same market niche: medium altitude, long endurance, capable of both surveillance and precision strikes, maximum takeoff weight of 1,260 kilograms, payload capacity of 115 kilograms, endurance of up to 30 hours, a retractable electro-optical sensor turret, and a 2-person ground control station with both line-of-sight and satellite communications. CASC sold the CH-4 to Iraq, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Myanmar, and the United Arab Emirates, among others. It flew real combat missions, in real wars, against real targets. In 2017, Saudi Arabia signed a partnership agreement with CASC to manufacture the CH-4 domestically on Saudi soil. That was the first Chinese drone ever licensed for foreign production. A milestone that passed with almost no commentary in the Western press. Then China decided it needed something bigger. 30 hours was not enough. The CH-5 made its maiden flight on the 1st of September 2015 at an undisclosed airfield in Gansu province. The flight lasted 20 minutes. The aircraft that completed it had a wingspan of 21 meters. It could carry up to 900 kilograms of weapons. It could fly at speeds between 160 and 220 kilometers per hour, reach altitudes up to 5 kilometers, and operate 2,000 kilometers from its ground control station when linked via satellite. The first mass-produced CH-5 flew in July 2017, 2 years from maiden flight to serial production. Its chief designer, Shi Wen, told reporters the CH-5 was as good as the American MQ-9 Reaper. The honest comparison: the CH-5 could carry roughly half the weapons payload of the Reaper at a fraction of the cost, and without any of the export restrictions. For the countries China was targeting, that trade-off was entirely acceptable. The CH-3, CH-4, and CH-5 share a common data link system, meaning they can operate together in a coordinated network. A CH-5 flying high and slow at altitude can direct a CH-3 or CH-4 to a target it has identified. The 3 drones are not just individual platforms, they are a family designed to work as a system. CASC did not stop at fixed-wing strike drones. In 2016, the company unveiled the CH-901. Forget what you know about drones that return to base. The CH-901 is a loitering munition, a drone with a warhead that circles a target area until it finds something worth killing, then dives into it. It carries a 3.5 kilogram shaped charge in high explosive or anti-tank configuration, guided by an electro-optical seeker. It can be launched from the ground or dropped from the air, including from the CH-4 and CH-5 already in service. Maximum speed in terminal dive, 288 kilometers per hour. The CH-901 is China's answer to Israel's Harop and the opening chapter of an entirely different kind of Chinese drone warfare, persistent, cheap, and expendable by design. While CASC was building its Rainbow Army, Chapter 4. The franchise Wing Loong, Cloud Shadow, and the industrial competitor, AVIC, the Aviation Industry Corporation of China, operates a completely separate drone lineage. Where CASC's Rainbow series is propeller-driven, export-oriented from the start, and built by a defense technology corporation, AVIC's platforms come from Chengdu Aircraft Industry Group, the same factory that builds China's fighter jets. The Wing Loong First, military designation GJ-1, was first produced in 2009 and entered service in 2011. Like the CH-4, it was built to challenge the American Predator. Like the CH-4, it succeeded. The Wing Loong 1A's LE-380 sensor turret could be equipped with a laser designator, allowing the aircraft to guide laser-guided munitions to target. AVIC offered it with the HJ-10 anti-tank missile, the LS-650 small-diameter bomb, and the TL-2 air-to-surface missile. It could fly at altitudes between 5,000 and 7,500 meters for up to 20 hours. AVIC began exporting the Wing Loong in 2010. By the end of 2018, 100 aircraft had been delivered to foreign customers. That list includes Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Uzbekistan, Russia, and Serbia. Serbia, in September 2019, became the first European country to purchase Chinese military drones, announcing a deal for 9 aircraft with options for 15 more. A Chinese armed drone operating out of a European country. That fact deserves a moment. Then came the Wing Loong 2, military designation GJ-2. Unveiled at the 2016 Zhuhai Air Show, first flight in 2017, PLAAF service in 2018. The Wing Loong 2 was everything the first model was and more. It could carry 12 air-to-surface missiles simultaneously, including the Blue Arrow 7 laser-guided missile, the TG-100 precision munition, and the AR-1 anti-tank guided weapon. It could fly at 7,000 meters for up to 32 hours. The domestic PLA version, the GJ-2, patrols the South China Sea and participates in live-fire exercises around Taiwan. The export version, the Wing Loong 2, has gone to buyers across the Middle East and Africa and been deployed in multiple combat theaters. A different kind of altitude. While the Wing Loong family operated on propellers, Chengdu was simultaneously developing something faster and harder to see. The Cloud Shadow was a jet-powered HALE unmanned aircraft unveiled at Airshow China in November 2016. Built by the same Chengdu Aircraft Industry Group that produces the Wing Loong line, but in a completely different performance class. The Cloud Shadow has a cruising altitude of 14,000 meters, 46,000 feet, higher than most commercial airliners fly. Maximum speed, 620 kilometers per hour. Payload, 400 kilograms. The airframe uses composite materials throughout and features a stealthy, angular profile. It can carry the Blue Arrow 7 missile, the YJ-9E, and the AG-300M precision munition series. It was offered to export customers in both strike and ISR configurations from day one. The Cloud Shadow is the bridge between China's propeller-era export drones and the stealth strike aircraft that were quietly taking shape in other facilities. Jet-powered, stealthy in silhouette, and marketed to the same customers who already owned Wing Loong variants. It is the kind of platform that barely gets mentioned in Western analyses of China's drone program, which is exactly why it matters. The Cloud Shadow's jet engine pointed somewhere else entirely. CASC, a third-state aerospace conglomerate entirely separate from both CASC and AVIC, had been developing its own drone line from the cruise missile side of the Chinese defense industry. Its third academy, also known as the China Haiying Electromechanical Technology Academy, specializes in cruise missiles for the PLA Navy. And cruise missiles and drones share enough engineering DNA that the crossover came naturally. The WJ-600 appeared at the 2010 Zhuhai Air Show, the first jet-powered unmanned strike aircraft China had ever publicly displayed. It had a cylindrical fuselage, swept wings, rocket-boosted launch, and parachute recovery. Wingspan 5.8 meters, length 6.5 meters. Speed between 500 and 700 kilometers per hour. Ceiling of 10,000 meters. It was explicitly shown with air-to-surface missiles mounted under the wings. In October 2016, two WJ-600A-D variants appeared in a military parade in Turkmenistan, the first confirmed export of a Chinese jet-powered strike drone. At the 2018 Zhuhai Air Show, CASC unveiled the WJ-700, the WJ-600's successor, a medium and high-altitude long-endurance armed reconnaissance platform with a maximum takeoff weight of 3,500 kilograms, endurance of 20 hours, and 4 underwing hardpoints carrying anti-radiation missiles, anti-ship missiles, and land attack munitions. The WJ-series is not the story people tell about Chinese drones, but it represents a third independent lineage, purpose-built for maritime strike, operating entirely outside the Rainbow and Wing Loong narratives most analysts focus on. Chapter 5. The Eyes That Never Blink, China's High-Altitude Reconnaissance Fleet. Strike capability gets the headlines. Reconnaissance capability wins the wars. China understood this lesson from the moment engineers walked out of the jungle in 1966 carrying pieces of Orion Firebee. The WZ-5 had kept the PLAAF's strategic ISR capability alive for 2 decades. By the 2000s, a replacement was being designed that would leave the WZ-5 so far behind it would be difficult to recognize them as belonging to the same category of machine. The WZ-7 Soaring Dragon, in Chinese Xianglong, was designed by Chengdu Aircraft Industry Group and manufactured by Guizhou Aircraft Industry Corporation. A model appeared at the 2006 Zhuhai Air Show. The first real airframe was not publicly displayed until the 2021 Zhuhai Air Show. Serial production began between 2015 and 2016. It entered service in 2018. 12 years from public concept to operational deployment, that timeline says everything about the technical ambition of what the WZ-7 was trying to be. The first thing you notice about the WZ-7 is the wing configuration. It uses a tandem joined wing design, front and rear wings connected at the tips, forming a rigid diamond shape when viewed from above. This is not a design you see on many aircraft, military or civilian. It provides an exceptionally rigid structure that improves the lift-to-drag ratio and simplifies flight controls at high altitude. The WZ-7 flies at altitudes comparable to the American RQ-4 Global Hawk, the benchmark for high-altitude long-endurance reconnaissance. Under the forward fuselage sits a gondola fairing large enough to house multiple sensor types simultaneously: optical cameras, infrared systems, synthetic aperture radar. A 2021 photograph placed the WZ-7 within a unit previously known only to operate specialized crewed electronic warfare aircraft. That single data point suggests the platform carries a signals intelligence and electronic warfare capability in addition to its imaging sensors. As of 2022, the PLAAF operated 12 WZ-7 units. The PLA Naval Air Force operated 8. Known operating bases include the Tibet Autonomous Region, Hainan Island, and Yishintun Air Base. In July 2019, a WZ-7 shadowed the American cruiser USS Antietam through the Taiwan Strait. In December 2022, one was deployed near the Indian border in Tibet. In March 2024, a WZ-7 flew over the Sea of Japan, prompting Japan to scramble F-15J fighters in response. In April 2024, one was observed over the West Philippine Sea, monitoring the U.S. deployment of a Typhoon missile launcher on Luzon. The WZ-7 is believed to provide targeting data for China's anti-ship ballistic missiles. The DF-21D and DF-26 can theoretically hit an aircraft carrier at sea, but a missile that can travel 1,500 kilometers cannot guide itself to a moving target. Something has to find the carrier, track it, and feed that data to the missile. The WZ-7 is widely assessed to be part of that kill chain. This is not a drone that watches. This is a drone that points. From watching to something that cannot be intercepted? The WZ-8 is in a different category entirely. Not medium altitude, not high altitude, near space. AVIC revealed the WZ-8 at China's National Day Parade on the 1st of October 2019. It is a rocket-powered, air-launched supersonic reconnaissance drone carried by a modified Xi'an H-6M bomber. The H-6 takes off, carrying the WZ-8 slung underneath, climbs to altitude, reaches the prescribed speed and release point, and drops the drone. The WZ-8 fires its rocket motors, accelerates to Mach 3, and climbs to an operational altitude of 30,000 meters, 100,000 feet, near space altitude. At that speed and that height, current interceptors cannot reliably engage it. According to U.S. intelligence assessments leaked through the Jack Teixeira documents in 2023, the National Geospatial-Intelligence Agency assessed that China had almost certainly established a first-of-its-kind WZ-8 operational unit, with WZ-8 systems identified at airfields in Anhui Province as early as December 2022. The classified diagram described in the leaked documents depicted the WZ-8 operating over Taiwan and the Yellow Sea at Mach 3 at 100,000 feet, then recovering at airfields including Zhangzhou, Huiyan, Fuzhou Yishu, and Dashuipo. The WZ-8's specific purpose is penetrating ISR. It is designed for scenarios where satellite coverage is degraded or denied, where the target is time-sensitive and the window for intelligence collection is narrow. It fills the gap between what a satellite can provide and what a strike package needs to find a moving carrier group in open ocean. No other country currently operates anything publicly comparable. Chapter 6. Ghost Machines, China's Stealth Strike Drones. In November 2013, satellite imagery analysts noticed something at a Chinese military airfield in Jiangxi Province. A small, dark, tailless aircraft, flying wing configuration. No vertical stabilizers. A shape that had only been seen in classified American programs and one French prototype. China had quietly flown a stealth, unmanned combat aircraft, and the world had almost missed it. The GJ-11, Chinese designation Gongji-11, also known as the Legion or Sharp Sword, was the product of AVIC's 601S program. Developed jointly by the Shenyang Aircraft Design Institute and the Hongdu Aviation Industry Group, the project was first announced internally in 2009. Ground testing began the 13th of December 2012. The maiden flight lasted 20 minutes and took place on the 21st of November 2013. That flight made China the fourth nation to fly a stealth UCAV, after the United States with the X-47B. France led Europe with the Neuron, and the United Kingdom with the Taranis. Not third, not second, fourth, but the American, French, and British programs all remained experimental demonstrators. The GJ-11 did not. The 2013 prototype flew with an exposed circular engine exhaust that visibly compromised its radar and infrared signature. Over the following years, that exhaust was redesigned, the serrated weapon bay doors were refined, and the overall shaping was improved. When the GJ-11 appeared publicly for the first time at China's National Day Parade on the 1st of October 2019, it was a significantly different aircraft from the 2013 demonstrator. Major General Tan Min, Executive Deputy Director of the parade's Joint Command Office, confirmed publicly that all equipment displayed at that parade was in active service with the PLA. The GJ-11 was not a prototype. It was operational. The aircraft has a wingspan of 14 meters, a length of 12.2 meters, and carries 2 internal weapons bays with serrated doors capable of holding up to 2,000 kilograms of munitions. The entire weapons load is internal. Nothing hangs from the wings. Nothing breaks the radar cross-section. When the bay doors close, the aircraft becomes a smooth flying wing with no visible external signature of its weapons load. By 2025, images had emerged of the GJ-11 deployed to Shigatse Air Base in Tibet, flying in formation with J-20 stealth fighters and J-16D electronic warfare aircraft. The combination is deliberate. A stealth UCAV flanked by a stealth fighter and a dedicated electronic warfare aircraft forms a complete deep penetration strike package with minimal human exposure. Then came the naval question. China had been working on a carrier-borne variant of the GJ-11 since 2019. The derivative, designated GJ-21, has appeared in imagery with landing gear extended and a catapult bar and tailhook visible, indicating adaptation for carrier operations. In 2025, the GJ-11 was displayed in a Victory Day parade with visible folding wing hinges, confirming the design intent for shipboard stowage. If the assessments are accurate, the GJ-21 would be the world's first and only operational ship-based stealth combat drone, flying from the Type 076 Sichuan amphibious assault ship equipped with electromagnetic aircraft launch systems. The same stealth technology, taken airborne from the ocean, the CH-7 follows a different path to the same destination. Where the GJ-11 came from the Fighter Jet Design Institutes, the CH-7 came from CASC, the same organization that built the Export Rainbow series. A mock-up of the CH-7 appeared at Airshow China 2018. A high aspect ratio flying wing with an 8-ton maximum takeoff weight and a stealth configuration designed for penetrating defended airspace. CASC announced in 2018 that the test flight would happen in 2019 and that serial production would begin in 2021. Neither deadline was met. The actual CH-7 airframe appeared at the 2024 Zhuhai Air Show. Its maiden flight occurred in December 2025, 7 years after the mock-up. In the world of clean-sheet stealth aircraft development, that delay is not unusual. But it means the CH-7 is still at the beginning of a long road, while the GJ-11 is already flying operational missions over the Himalayas. Chapter 7. What comes next? Loyal wingmen, motherships, and the shape of future war. By 2021, China had armed drones that could strike at medium altitude, reconnaissance drones that could watch from near space, and stealth UCAVs that could penetrate air defense networks. The next question was whether unmanned aircraft could fly in direct formation with manned fighters, thinking fast enough to serve as a true combat wingman. The answer appeared at Airshow China 2021 inches, the form of a concept aircraft called the FH-97, developed by Feihong Company, a subsidiary of CASC's 9th Academy. The FH-97 was designed as a loyal wingman, an unmanned aircraft that flies alongside a manned fighter, expanding its sensor reach, absorbing threats on its behalf, and striking targets the pilot designates. Its initial configuration focused on suppressing air defenses with electronic countermeasures, flying ahead of the formation into the threat envelope and forcing enemy radar systems to expose themselves. At Airshow China 2022, CASC unveiled the FH-97A, an evolved variant with a twin-engine configuration and internal bays for both air-to-air and air-to-ground munitions. The FH-97A was specifically designed to operate alongside the J-20 stealth fighter, its own stealthy profile matching the radar signature discipline of the aircraft it was meant to escort. It can form dense automated formations. It can function as a sensor node. It can take damage protecting its crewed partner. In mid-2025, reports emerged that an FH-97 variant had been observed in preparations for China's Victory Day parade in Beijing. The parade's organizing committee confirmed publicly that all equipment displayed was domestically produced, active-duty frontline hardware. If confirmed, that would make China the first country in history to publicly deploy operational loyal wingman drones, ahead of the United States, Australia, and every European program still in testing. A drone that serves a mothership of its own? The Jiutian, developed by AVIC's first Aircraft Design and Research Institute and showcased at Airshow China 2024 under the name Smart Configuration Support UAV, made its first flight on December 11, 2024. It is not a strike aircraft. It is not a reconnaissance platform. The Jiutian is a drone designed to carry and deploy other drones. Maximum takeoff weight, 16 tons. Of that, 6 tons is payload, drones, munitions, sensors, jamming systems, whatever the mission requires. Top speed, 385 knots. Ferry range, 7,000 kilometers. Endurance, 12 hours. An aircraft that can fly from a base on the Chinese mainland, cross the Pacific, deploy a swarm of smaller strike drones, and return. The Jiutian concept does not replace any of the platforms that came before it. It multiplies them. A single Jiutian deploying CH-901 loitering munitions and FH-97 loyal wingmen in coordinated swarm attacks against a carrier strike group represents a level of unmanned operational complexity that no military in the Pacific world has formally exercised. Yet, consider the distance covered. From the Changkong one-target drone, a reverse-engineered Soviet missile bait that could barely simulate an enemy aircraft for training purposes, to the Jiutian, a jet-powered drone mothership with a 7,000-kilometer ferry range. From a machine that existed to be shot at to a machine that exists to ensure everything else gets through. That distance was covered in less than 60 years by engineers who started with wreckage. This is the arsenal most of the world does not know exists. The countries flying Chinese armed drones today stretch across 4 continents: Algeria, Iraq, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, the UAE, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Myanmar, Laos, Indonesia, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Nigeria, Zambia, Jordan, Turkmenistan, and Serbia. That list is not shrinking. It grows each time China signs a new deal that the United States declined to make because of human rights conditions, end-use restrictions, or congressional review requirements. China did not build the world's most sophisticated drone. It built the world's most accessible arsenal of drones. Available to governments the West will not arm, at prices the West cannot match, with political conditions that amount to use them however you need. Every one of those 20 platforms, From the CK-1 that flew in 1966 to the Jiutian that flew in 2024 was built on the same principle. Take what exists, understand it completely. Improve it past what the original designers imagined was possible. And when no one will sell you what you need, build it yourself. Then, sell it to everyone they refused. That principle has not changed. And given what is currently operating out of Chinese airfields, over disputed seas, and in the arsenals of governments on every continent except Antarctica, it is not about to.